So Canada has a new prime minister after a long rule of Trudeau. We have a different kind of person representing the Liberal Party, of course, because this is a parliamentary republic. We can just have as many prime ministers as we want during one election. So no election has happened in Canada yet, but Mark Carney, the new prime minister, is supposed to call one this weekend, meaning if it does, and also there were talks about that it's going to be an early election. Basically, I think sort of trying to capitalize on the up or the big boost that the Liberal Party got recently. So the election will most likely be, I read April 28th, but Nicholas has said that it might be more like May 5th. Either way, it pretty much means like a month and a bit at most, so just a few weeks. And today we'll talk about especially since Liberal Party as of right now seems like it's going to win. And if I was a betting man, I think I would pretty much bet on Liberal Party, pretty much grabbing the victory pretty easily. So we'll talk about what that might mean for the next how long is the 4 years or 5 years? How long is the cabinet elected for in Canada? I don't even know. But someone who does know a bit more is Nicholas Krushek, who lives in Canada. So it might be, especially when it comes to internal politics, someone from the area is much better because you can. I watched the first speech he did, but it was like the typical Polish politician stuff. You cannot really grab that much out of it. So yeah, Nicholas, what do you make of your new prime minister so far?
Well, let me begin by framing the issue in terms of the way I think the average Canadian is going to be thinking about our new prime minister. Bearing in mind that most people have a pretty superficial grasp of political principles. So they'll look at a candidate, they'll look at the externals. They'll look at someone like Mark Carney and say, okay, he's Harvard and Oxford educated. PhD in economics. He was a Goldman Sachs investment banker for 13 years. Then he was head of the Bank of Canada. He was the head of the Bank of England, and now has been part of Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. And like Justin Trudeau and like Chrystia Freeland, who was Justin Trudeau's finance minister, Mark Carney has for many years been involved with the World Economic Forum, which meets in Switzerland under Klaus Schwab. So his his record on paper, it certainly sounds impressive, and people are thinking, okay, we're going through difficult economic times. We have all these tariffs that Trump is imposing on us. We need someone with economic knowledge and economic experience. So who better than Mark Carney, someone who has a PhD in economics, lots of experience in the banking world, in the central banking world, and now some political experience. What people aren't looking at more closely is what exactly is the nature of the ideology that he brings to the table? What are his ideas and how is he going to put them into practice? Now, let me offer an analogy here. Now, when I go grocery shopping, I like to look at the labels of the food that I'm buying. I don't just look at something, oh, it says it's all natural. That's got to be healthy. I'll buy that. Or this says it's organic. No, I look at the labels. I look at the ingredients. I look at, how much sugar, how much fat, how much cholesterol, whatever, how many calories before I buy something. And, some people do that. But how many people, before they choose the leader of their country, which let's be honest, the kind of political leadership that we're in can make a big difference in terms of our economic prosperity. It can make a lot of difference in terms of our standard of living. How many people really bother to look at the ideas that a politician expresses and talks about and writes about? So one of the things that I want to talk about today is what we can gather from where Mark Carney is planning to take Canada based on his spoken statements, but also based on his book. So a few years ago, Mark Carney published a book called Values, which I've read the first few chapters. I don't have the stomach to read the whole thing, full disclosure, but I think at the first, what he says about it, what he says in the first few chapters gives you an idea of his priorities. So first of all, Mark Carney is like Trudeau. Mark Carney definitely believes that climate change is an existential threat to humanity. And so he says things like, we need to make sure that 80% of our fossil fuels remain under the ground. bear in mind that Canada is very much has a resource economy. Think of the province of Alberta, where a lot of our coal and oil and natural gas come from, which you know provides money for even other provinces like Ontario and Quebec. So think of what the consequences of that would mean, that we have to leave 80% of our fossil fuels underground. Another statement that Carney makes, it just even in the preface to his book, is he says that he makes it clear that he regards net zero as our primary political and social goal. And there's a very telling statement in the preface to his book. He says that companies that embrace the program of net zero will be handsomely rewarded. Businesses that don't embrace net zero will cease to exist. Cease to exist. Businesses that don't embrace net zero will cease to exist. Think about that when you go to the polls, my dear fellow Canadians.
Yeah, I mean, uh, so you mentioned about the sort of, he's the economics guy. Maybe if we get someone who, I mean, that's the, I mean, obviously it's different, but sort of we heard something sort of similar, let's get Trump in office. He's someone who knows business. Let's get a businessman there. And the problem is that, when it comes to politics, it doesn't have to do anything with business. The point of politics, it's a it is a unique type of thing that you need philosophy or philosophy of law to understand what is the necessary thing to do. It's not about making deals. It's not about what we oftentimes see. So something that he did is apparently he got rid of the carbon tax, which sounded I'll just mention, which sounded nicely at first, and then I realized that it mentioned, oh, it just carbon tax for like individual sort of citizens or sort of for the public, not for the companies, not for anything. So again, pretty marginal thing because it's always the biggest companies that are being punished for being productive, for being effective, for making the society work. Again, when it comes to Canada, which is, as you mentioned, heavily reliant on the natural resources and is benefiting from them. Um, so yeah, what oftentimes you see from these people is oftentimes you don't see just punishment, just sort of will shut you down or anything. It's always sort of put in as well. We'll reward you. We'll give you some benefits if benefits for ESG. If you're a company that tries to sort of adhere to these principles, you'll get a reward. But again, what is that reward? It is taxpayer money. It is taking money from the productive sectors of the economy and giving it to the unproductive ones. Because again, if these sort of policies were profitable, they would be made. When the state gets involved, it means they are not profitable. They are not. And again, what does profitable means? It's not just, some stock exchange in New York that like moves up in numbers. It's how much money do people have in their pockets? How much their standard of living is increasing? That what profits for those companies mean. Um,
Yeah, well, just to take one example of that, so Carney has made it clear that he wants to transition to a green economy. How well is that working out in Europe? How well is that working out in Germany and England and other countries? Not very well. I think it's going to work even much worse here in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, does the sun even shine in Canada? I mean, most of the state, like, well, I don't know if specifically the sort of solar is even the thing that Canadians would go for. But again, it's sort of when it comes to even these green policies, it's always such a dogmatic sort of like move towards it because even in the free economy, I think there is a like a place for solar, for thermal, for the sort of the so-called like green energy. But the fact is, when you try to force it on the markets, when you try to make it so, when it is not effective, again, that's irregularities in the market that are inherently destructive towards the economy. Um,
Well, yes,
so yeah.
Mark Carney has made it clear that he's an authoritarian in his approach to economics and in his approach to governance. So, in one of his first speeches after he was sworn in last week, he criticized his primary opponent, Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party, and saying, "Oh, Poilievre, he's a career politician who worships at the altar of the free market." I don't know. If I were Polyev, I would wear that as a badge of honor. But Carney has made it clear that he doesn't trust free markets. And he, again, getting back to his book on values, he criticizes the free market again and again. He makes it clear that he doesn't think that free markets work, that you need the strong hand of the government to basically tell us peasants what we should do, what we should value, how we should spend our money, how we should engage in industry and trade. That's what we have to look forward to. And look at what that approach has taken under Trudeau. And I want to stress that if you want an indication of what Carney is going to do, look at the last 10 years of Justin Trudeau's government. And we're going to get more of the same. And in some superficial way, Carney has tried to distance himself from Trudeau. For one thing, he said, unlike Trudeau, I'm going to focus on the economy. Well, that's a pretty vague statement to begin with. Has Justin Trudeau not been focusing on the economy? After all, Mr. Carney has been a member of Justin Trudeau's economic task force for the past couple of years. And then this whole business about scrapping the carbon tax. Well, that was very unpopular. So he's trying to present himself in a certain way to voters. But look at what Trudeau's policies have done to Canada. About a decade ago, the Canadian per capita GDP was not very far below that of the United States. It was pretty close to being on par. Now it's 60%. That means for every dollar that an American earns, a Canadian earns 60 cents. And it's going down. Our per capita GDP is constantly going down. And if we continue along the same path, if we continue along the same policies, the same net zero, ESG, heavy-handed authoritarian approach, our economy is going to get worse and worse. Just in the news this morning, I saw a very interesting headline which said that two-thirds of Canadian youth claim that their mental health is in crisis because of a skyrocketing cost of living. Think about that. Two-thirds of young people in Canada are saying that their mental health is suffering because they can't afford a home, because they can't afford a down payment on a home. They can't afford, something like 1 out of 4 Canadians have what's called food insecurity, which means, they don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They're lining up at food banks, which those are dwindling as well. So Canada is not doing well. 10 years ago, we were doing relatively decently, but we're not doing well today. And it seems like we're on the path that's going to give us more of the same.
Yeah, and that is why it's well, just quickly because you mentioned the sort of the GDP per capita of Canada, and the fact is that if Canada was a state in the United States, not to sort of point in any direction, but sort of it would be, I think, 50th poorest state. Basically, I think only Mississippi would have GDP per capita lower, or I think maybe one more state. So it would be pretty much trailing at a completely in behind. And
That's quite right. Actually, our wealthiest province, which is, I believe, Ontario, has a lower per capita GDP than the poorest U.S. state, which, as you pointed out, is Mississippi. So the situation here is bad overall. It's bad and it's getting worse.
I don't think that would be right. I because all of Canada GDP per capita. So I think richest state would. I would imagine the richest province in Canada would have a higher GDP per capita than average.
Then the United States,
No, no, no. Just uh,
then the poorest U.S. state. The richest
yeah,
Canadian province is worse off than the poorest U.S. state.
yeah. I don't think that's right, but I might have different numbers. Yeah, yeah, but it's still not it's still not good. Even if it was ahead or behind, it's still not
Yeah.
ideal for Canada. And yeah, the fact that pretty much as you said, I think some people are talking sort of about change, and whenever sort of a leader steps down, it's like, well, now we'll get something new. Now we'll get like something different. It's no longer going to be Trudeau, who was becoming more and more unpopular. Like conservatives were supposed to pretty much take a huge win in the upcoming election. Then it turned around when Trump started the trade war against Canada. And yeah, now it's looking like the Liberal Party will sort of get it. But the fact is that, as you mentioned, what will really change? Will we see? Is there anything really that will become sort of different, or are we going to just go the same way we have been for the 10 years of Trudeau? Or is it gonna get worse? Is oftentimes what you see, especially from sort of like some economists or some business people who do take some public office, is they have sort of like a confidence, well, I'll be able to like manage the economy. I'm sort of like good enough to sort of toggle the knots in the exact precise way that it will turn Canada prosperous.
Well, that's just the thing. Carney, by nature, he has the central planner's mentality, the autocratic central planner's mentality. He thinks, I've got the experience. I know more than all you peasants. I know how to manage the economy. And of course, his lack of trust in the free market is already a matter of record, even based on his own statements.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, the sort of, I think the vilification of the free market is exactly what is dangerous because oftentimes you see even from the people who are for statism, who do not like free markets. I mean, just remember, the statements from the Bush Jr., who had to save the free market system. There is sort of like at least like the lip service they are giving to it. Like, no, 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 we want free markets, but we need to regulate it in some ways. We need to make it fair. We need to make it sort of, we need to like control it so it like works in the right way. But once you start having this straight up vilification of the free market, that's when it starts getting really dangerous because there is no even sort of like presuming of that it is something we want to have. Something he has also mentioned is sort of like opening more trade with different countries besides US, sort of making trade within Canada itself sort of more easy, basically the provincial trades between them. And whenever I hear sort of politicians talk about like especially something that is sort of simple, like, oh, let's make trade within Canada easier. It's like a duh, of course. But when you get to the actual core of it, and the reasoning why the trade is problematic is the same reason that what Trump started doing. It is protectionism. It is separate provinces wanting to protect their own business, wanting to basically wanting to continue stagnate and not compete with other provinces. And also the regulations is the fact that every single province sort of handles their own regulations in many cases, and there is no sort of harmonization. And unless there is again, if you don't believe in free market, why would you want free market between provinces? That is like another thing where even sort of solving these things require a certain kind of philosophy. And yeah, I mean, will Mark Carney have anything close to that?
Well, that's just the thing. The trade barriers between provinces they spring from a desire for each province to maintain a regulatory stranglehold over its main industries and its main resources. And yeah, a lack of trust in in the efficiency of free markets. The idea that you can actually save certain industries that are being run inefficiently rather than just letting the market take over, letting the inefficient industries fail so that each province can specialize, each geographic region can specialize in what it does best. But I see no indication that Mark Carney believes in that. Now, as far as seeking trade with other countries, if United States is proving not to be such a good trade partner, yes, I'm certainly in favor of forming trade relationships with European countries, with Asian countries. But why didn't Trudeau do more of that over the past 10 years? There were plenty of opportunities. There were Asian countries and European countries that wanted our oil and our natural gas, and Trudeau said no. Why? Because he has a particular ideology, a particular view of fossil fuels, and his goal being net zero and green energy, an ideology which Carney also adheres to. So again, that gives us an indication of what he's going to do.
Yeah, and even when it comes to, I mean, you mentioned sort of like keeping 80% of the natural resources below the ground.
Fossil
Again,
fuels, yeah.
yeah, sorry, fossil fuels. I mean, again, every country should do whatever it has, the comparative advantage. Every country has something that is unique. Canada is in a very unique spot because it's such a it is a huge country. I mean, it is like third or fourth biggest one or something like that. If you count all of it, it's insanely huge country, but also very little population comparing sort of especially for the size of it. And natural resources is one of the things that especially when it comes to relatively free country, what we always see in the world is sort of all the natural resources are under authoritarian nations such as China, such as Russia, such
Russia.
as the Middle East, and that's a big problem because trade, because in many cases we need to trade with them for those natural resources because it was the Western nations that have realized that wealth can be created and doesn't rely on natural resources. But the fact is, you need some of them, and when the free nations that do have them decide that you know what? Why bother? Why bother? Why bother? Getting our own resources when we can trade with dictatorships for them or for the results of them. So
Or worse yet, become a dictatorship ourselves.
yeah, and then we can maybe use them.
Seems to be the path we're on. Honestly, I wouldn't blame the province of Alberta if the Liberals win the next election and they decide, screw this, we're going to become part of the United States. I would not blame them at all. If it weren't so cold, I would probably move to Alberta if they did that.
Actually, that's interesting enough. I don't know much about sort of like separate provinces in Canada. What is sort of the unique aspect about Alberta? Is it like the more, let's say, liberal or sort of, I guess, conservative in this case?
Classically, yeah, the prairie provinces in general, particularly Alberta and Saskatchewan, so they're very rich in natural resources, coal, oil, natural gas, and they're thriving resource economy is even paying for other provinces like Ontario and Quebec through these transfer payments where they pool their resources and some of the provinces that aren't doing as well economically get a share of those transfer payments. But the general attitude in Alberta seems to be more pro free market, more right leaning, and there's a sense of pride there, a sense of pride and a sense of frustration with Ottawa, a sense of frustration with the federal government, particularly over the last 10 years under Trudeau. There's certainly been a lot of conflict between Trudeau and between Premier Smith, Danielle Smith of Alberta, and I know Daniel Smith went down to Mar-a-Lago back in, I think it was January, around the time of the inauguration to meet with Donald Trump. I don't know the details of the meeting, but Donald Trump being a negotiator, I'm sure he could probably make her a good deal. Join us. We'll give you better money in exchange for your oil and natural gas. Who knows? It could happen.
Yeah, as someone who really despises to see border gore on the map, I would really hope that Alberta doesn't sort of like leave, because like seeing that sort of like panhandle into Canada would look not the best. Not to mention even the idea of like nations sort of splitting off and joining another nation
On
would
the other hand,
yeah.
I would be quite happy to see Quebec leave Canada because right now they're the biggest Liberal Party supporters. And Quebec, they're the ones who are always criticizing Alberta, oh, the filthy fossil fuels, and yet they're taking the money from those filthy fossil fuels. Hypocrites. They're absolute hypocrites.
Yeah, and Quebec is one of those provinces that has been calling for independence on and on. I believe they had one referendum, or at least one that I've seen that was sort of like close to being
In the
successful.
90s, yeah, yeah. Give it to them. They want independence, give it to them.
Yeah, so we might see that. But we have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. So, sort of in the last few minutes, what do you think is hope for Canada, really? Now it seems like we'll get pretty much 4 more years of the Liberal Party, which would mean, and again, that's even supposing that when conservatives come into power, they'll, you know, fix everything, or they'll be able to like fix enough stuff so basically Canada can at least continue living. But yeah, what are your sort of like hopes for the next few years and the next few decades when it comes to sort of Canada even being able to sort of solve their problems? I mean, earlier someone was saying that the median house price in Canada is 700,000. If that's true, that's wild. Although I understand that's Canadian dollars, so that might be only like 50K, like American. I'm
No, no,
exaggerating.
no.
Yeah.
Canadians pay way more for housing and for everything than Americans do. We earn less, but we pay more for, especially housing is really bad. No, let me make it actually absolutely clear. Pierre Poilievre is the last hope for this country. We're not going to see another leader like that again. He's our Javier Milei. He's the man who could unleash the free market, turn the economy around. We're not going to see another leader of the Conservative Party. Now, the last few leaders of the Conservative Party, like Andrew Scheer, they were relative non-entities. They had good ideas, but they weren't really charismatic. They didn't really connect with the people. Poilievre has been traveling through Canada. He does something like 700 or 800 events a year, mostly on weekends. He'll go to, 10, 20 companies and meet with people, just talk to Canadians, get to know them, get to know their problems, what they need, how can the government help you? We have not seen a leader with this kind of first of all, intelligence. No, I've watched some long podcasts with him. It's clear that he understands what's wrong with Canada economically. He basically knows what to do about it. He's basically on the right track. I hope Canadians will grow a few brain cells in the next 5 weeks and listen to his message and give him a chance. Now, I have to say that his messaging to the country has not been great. In fact, it's been pretty bad. The sound bites that he's given to the news media they're getting a little bit tired, and they're, attacking Mark Carney, calling him carbon tax Carney. That's getting a little bit boring. I think Poilievre needs to trust the intelligence of the Canadian people and really lay out what he's going to do. What is he going to do that's different than what the Liberals are going to do? He needs to distinguish himself. He needs to embrace the mantle of, worshiping at the altar of the free market, whatever you want to call. I think he needs to lay his cards on the table, not play it safe, but and he's in a difficult position because on the one hand, you can't run and you can't educate the country while you're running a political campaign. You can't do the two things at the same time. So I think he just has to trust that if he sends the right message, an honest message, that enough people will understand and will vote for him. But if he loses this election, we're not going to get another chance. That's going to spell the death of Canada
Yeah,
economically.
and sort of something that, well, it might just need to get a bit worse for Canada for something different to happen. Because again, the what happened in Argentina is it was really bad, and then you had someone, Milei, who was willing to say that this is bad, and even if I get power, it's gonna be bad. We will suffer, but we will eventually like get out of this, and that was it needs to be happen, especially I don't know how sort of like critical is the situation in Canada, but what's important to oftentimes say is sort of prepare the voters for what's to come, especially if things are bad. That the fact that yeah, things might be bad even if I take power for some time before things will be able we will be able to sort of fix some of the things for the long term. We have a super chat from Gail. Thank you so much. She says, Alberta, a strong producer, has been forced to send equalization payments to have not provinces. We have about a minute left. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And also, any last thoughts other than that?
Yes, that's right. Those are the transfer payments I was listening to or mentioning earlier. Yeah, that's the wealthier provinces, the more resource-rich provinces are sending payments to the poorer provinces who then spit on them and criticize them for, oh, filthy fossil fuels, yeah, it's total hypocrisy.
Uh, where can people find you? And anything else that you'd like to say?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, and if there are any Canadians watching this, get educated about the issues. Learn some basic things about politics, about economics. Read Frederick Bastiat's What is Seen and What is Unseen. Read Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. That'll give you the tools that you need to understand the issues and to be able to communicate them intelligently to other people. We need more people out there spreading good ideas, people who understand politics and economics, who can explain the issues to other people. And our time is running out. It looks like we have 5 weeks now to save the country or else.
Yeah, and as someone who just read one of those essays and is reading one of those books, I definitely recommend it, especially if you are someone who is interested in economics but has never read something. I think both of them are great sort of starting point. We have the reality show coming up in just a minute or so, talking about Wikipedia jihadis. So make sure to join us for that. With that, thank you, Nicholas, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And Canada, good luck.